Hi everyone, so in today's video I quickly want to run through what you need to do for application 7. It's slightly different from what we've done before. It's actually more based on the material that we've been covering and doing some of these problems, but basically all put together. So in the last few chapters, 10, 11 and 12, we've been looking at z-tests, t-tests, one proportion z-tests, then we've done the two sample t-test, the two sample z-test, the two proportion z-test, then we've done the intervals for these, we've done paired difference test, which runs a t-test on the list of differences, so we've done a ton of different tests. What I want to do here is there are 14 problems, as you will see on this document. I want you to go through these 14 problems and tell me, there's two things I want you to write on here. Number one is what test you have used in order to solve the problem. So I need you to look at the problem and go, okay, let's say it's given me a sample standard deviation. Therefore, I know it's some kind of a t-test. If it's given me a population standard deviation, I know I'm looking at a z-test. If I'm looking at a problem and it's given me a proportion of something, I know I'm looking at a one proportion z-test. If I've been given two proportions, it's a two proportion z-test. If it's asking for a confidence interval, what do I run there? So you need to look at these problems and kind of note down what you have been given and what test should be used. So number one, when you answer each of these, you're going to do this on the Word document itself and then resubmit the Word document. I want you to write down what test you have used. And then the next thing I want you to write down is what the actual solution is. Now, there's a slight difference in how we're going to be doing this. You're actually going to be running this on Excel. Okay, so if I look at the Excel document that comes with it, it's called spreadsheet templates. You'll notice down the bottom here, I have a bunch of different tabs. Each one of these is a different test. Okay, so this first one is a one proportion z interval. It's a one proportion confidence interval. Then we have a two proportion confidence interval and the test of significance. So this will run both the confidence interval for a two proportion and it will also run the z test that goes with the two proportion one. Then we've got this one here is a confidence interval. It will run both a z and a t test. If you have the sample standard deviation known, or if you don't know the sample standard deviation, but you have the population standard deviation, depends on which one you're going to use. So this top one here is if you know what the population standard deviation is. So this will be if you're running a z-test. This one here is if you are running a t-test. You can also run the confidence intervals here if you're running either a z-interval or a t-interval. So all of these, you can go down the bottom and you can see exactly what we have here. We've got tests of significance, so that is just the test. We've got ones for confidence intervals, so you just have to pick which one you need to use. I'm actually going to run this for the first one, just to show you how it works. So if we look at this first problem, it says a retirement planning firm conducted a survey of 80 working Americans, so we know that our sample size is 80, and it found that 40% of them had adequate retirement savings for their age group. So we have a sample proportion from our sample of 80 people, okay? And our proportion is 0.4, 40%. So I've only been given this one proportion, okay? So I know I'm looking at a one proportion. Now the question is it a test or is it a confidence interval? Well, if we then look at the next line, it says create the 99% confidence interval for the proportion of working Americans with adequate retirement savings. So I now know I'm doing a one proportion z interval, okay? So if we come to our Excel document here, I want a one proportion confidence interval. That's my first one here. Then my sample size is 80. My sample proportion is 0.4 because 40% of my 80 people had adequate retirement savings. And then I want the 99% confidence interval. And once you've plugged those two numbers in, it will actually calculate that confidence interval for you. So that tells me that roughly between 25.89% and 54.11% of people in the whole population in America have adequate retirement savings for their age group. So my confidence interval is 0.2589 up to 0.5411. Okay, so that's all you're going to do for each one of these. If you do get stuck on this, the best thing to actually do, once you know what test you're going to use, you can always run it in your calculator and double check what's on Excel. Okay, but what I want you to do for each one, okay, what you would type here is 1 proportion z interval, because that's the test that we have used. You would then type in what your answer was. So in this case, we would type in our confidence interval of 0.2589 up to 0.5411. And then finally, what I want you to do, just so that I know what you've typed in and we can figure out like where you've gone wrong if you don't quite get the answer right or if you've used the wrong test or whatever, I want you to take a screenshot of each thing that you've done. So here you can ignore this part here because we're not doing anything in a finite population. We're using an infinite population for what we're doing. You can just screenshot this area here that tells me what the answer is and where you've got it from. Okay, and it tells me exactly what you've typed in. Okay, so whenever you do this, that would be my recommendation to you, okay, is to tell me what test you've used, what your solution is, and if you can include a screenshot of exactly what you've used in Excel, that would be great, just so that we can see where you've gone right and where you've gone wrong. Okay, so you're going to do that for these 14 questions. The first, I'll give you a hint actually, the first 7 problems are all to do with proportions. They're 1 proportion tests, 2 proportion tests, or they're 1 or 2 proportion confidence intervals. So the first 7 problems are all about the proportions. The last 7 problems are all to do with Z and T tests. So if you're dealing with Z test, T test, or a 2 sample Z test or a 2 sample T test. And then this last one down here, you'll recognize from your homework, number 14, that's going to be a paired difference test. So they are split up. So, I mean, they are kind of jumbled, like all of the proportion ones are jumbled and all of the mean ones are jumbled. But just as a heads up, the first 7 are to do with proportions. The last 7 are to do with Z and T tests, whether that's 1 mean or 2 means. Okay. If you do get stuck with this, please let me know and I will see you in the next video.